Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo. We're here at the South Park Center. I'm glad to be joined with DM with his fantastic movie, Floater. Let's take a look at the clip.
We should pull up his pants. Mom shouldn't have to see him like this.
DM, thank you for being here. Welcome to the New Filmmakers Los Angeles family. Thank you for bringing your film to us as well. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Your film was complex, so many questions, but for those that haven't seen it, tell us the brief synopsis.
So, Floater is a dark horror comedy, although some people might not find it that funny. But it is about a grieving son whose father passes, and he ends up locking himself in the bathroom where his dad died, and has a psychotic break, although it might be a case of possession. I leave that up to the audience.
I mean, it certainly had a lot of horrific horror contexts, which you did really, really well in the filmmaking for sure. Really, really fantastic to watch. But it, it has this comedy, horror, can also feel very dramatic and real also as well. Brilliant how you put all those genres together. Where did the inspiration come for you in deciding to turn this idea into a film, and the way that you did it as well?
This is a bit of a downer story, but it started about 10 years ago. I was working actually on a series, which I won't name, where one of our leads was an abuser, and working on that show, having been abused myself, I knew that going into it, working with this person, and it was a really traumatizing experience. And while this was going on, I had a boss who was very difficult to work with. And on top of that, it's hard, I think, in our business. We're taught to pitch yourself in a sentence. And you're supposed to, as if our lives have a 3-act structure. Yeah. And I think it's tough when you're talking about trauma and abuse, because it doesn't fit into a coherent narrative. Yeah. So for me, it's so I was dealing with this on the show. I was dating someone who very randomly became a actually pretty famous musician, and put out a music video that made fun of me. And then the third thing is my former best friend, who became an abuser of mine in middle school and high school, I found out had died from a terrorist attack, which was not a call you ever expect to hear for someone who didn't work in the military. Yeah. It was very crazy. So I was dealing with all these really complicated feelings and a lot of trauma and abuse. I ended up having my own psychological break. Yeah. And when I came out of it, I got help, and this kind of came out of me as a short story. Obviously reflecting a lot of what I was dealing with. I sort of made it about a dad, because that felt a little more grounded for me. And I think when you're also talking about your own trauma and your own abuse, I think it can be helpful to create a level of artifice to engage with it, because 100%. Writing with it when you're trying to write about the exact same thing that happened to you, I think it can be re-triggering. So for me, I've been in therapy for a long time. So for me, giving it that level was really important. Just so I could actually write it, and it sort of came out really fully formed. And I didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, this is the ugliest, most horrible thing that's happened to me. Why would I put this out there for people? And I think that's a thing I really struggled with. And then I God, over a decade later, I had finally built up the courage to direct, because that was always what I wanted to do. I've been a writer for a long time, but directing was always what I wanted to do. And it had to be this. I feel like I had so much catharsis I needed to sort of expurge. And Floater was all of that. It was all of this horrible year in my life and all of the stuff that happened to me when I was younger, put into one film, one story. And so that's really what it came from. Not the most uplifting background, but that's really where it came from.
Well, first again, thank you for sharing that with us, because honestly, it's not easy filmmaking, let alone coming from experiences that you've gone through. And goodness me, for anyone that's been in an abusive position, which I certainly have as well, and trying to, kind of therapeutically move yourself forward creatively as a human being, it's really rough. And I think when you don't see trauma on the outside, you don't really sometimes always know what's going on the inside. And so how you made a genius film out of all of that, my goodness, but well done. Honestly, give yourself a pat on the back for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, seriously. And it's really, really, really hard. But I'm so glad that A, you're here, and B, that you're able to now celebrate it for your craft as a director, which you deserve. And now you're the one in the right seat.
Appreciate that.
No, seriously. This film had so much levels of context to it. Like, I actually watched it a few times because it gave me different things. One of those films you want to go back to and watch again because you've got different perspectives. Now, bringing this insanely great cast together as well, and also, the dynamics that those individuals go through. How do you bring your cast together? And B, how do you work with your cast as a director as well?
Well, the cast, it was a bit of a stroke of luck. Jacob Wysocki was kind of on my list. In the short story, it was always, I wanted someone large, because in the story, he actually ends up losing a lot of weight. And so I had it in my head just visually who this person looked like. And I was familiar with Jacob's comedy, and I hate being like, oh, he had the look, but he had the look, and I didn't know if he could do the dramatic side of it. But I find comedy actors really, especially seasoned comedy actors, can do drama so well. I mean, Jim Carrey was like my favorite growing up, and I loved his dramatic work as well. And so he was on the list. I'm like, I think he's great. Hopefully he can do it. And it was just sort of a list you write where you're like, it'd be awesome to get this person. And then my producers on this, they were like, actually, we just did a thing with Jacob. Let me give him a call. So that was felt like this amazing moment of serendipity. Yeah, I feel like it doesn't always happen. When it does, you're like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right zone for it. And then my other cast, we got a great casting director, Rachel Rice, who is out of New York. And she got us Darcy Rose, who was amazing, and Christine. And Jeffrey Nordling, he's actually a friend of a friend, and since the film, we've become good friends. That was a really amazing thing that came together as well, because I was trying to cast this role, and I'm like, it's tough. This is a really hard role to ask someone to do. It's like, you're gonna play this horrible person who abused this kid, and I leave it vague as far as what he did to him, but I'm like, it's hard to ask that to me of somebody. It's like, hey, you want to play Hannibal Lecter? That's like a tough thing.
Absolutely. And how do you work with those actors?
So I've been doing theater out here since 2017. I originally started directing a directing workshop they have at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. They do the Saturday class. So I started there. They let directors sit in with the acting class. It's a scene study workshop. And you can come in as a director and sort of hone your craft, which I think is so hard as a director. It's like writing, I can always write, but directing, I'm like, you kind of have to wait around for something to happen. But this was like an amazing opportunity. I'd actually been working on a show, and one of our editors, this show called Rosewood, which was on Fox, I was one of the writers. And my final episode on the show, our director was one of our editors. And I asked him, how did you get into this? How did you... And he told me about the Playhouse, and I had a lovely time there. And I studied under Howie Deutsch, who's an amazing director. Did a lot of John Hughes films in the 80s. I was a big fan of his. So Howie now has his own thing he runs called Workspace, and I'm still direct there. So I guess that working in theater, I'm so used to working with actors, which was always my fear. I think what stopped me from directing for a very long time was I didn't understand actors. I didn't have a background in it. I was afraid that I would say the wrong thing, that I'd, you hear these stories of monstrous directors. Like there's Friedkin, who I really respect him as a craftsman, but you hear about what he did to his actors on Exorcist, and I'm like, I don't want to be that, especially someone who has been abused.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't ever, like that was in my head. I'm like, oh, a director is a person that abuses people to get things. And I'm like, I could never come to terms with that. And so working in the place and working with actors, I'm like, oh, these are just humans. These are, no one's scary. And, I'm working with actors. I've like Harry Hamlin was in the class, and I grew up watching Clash of the Titans. It was like one of my favorite movies. So I'm like, I was afraid to talk to him, but then I'm like, oh, this is a normal guy, really lovely human. They're all, so that gave me this ease around people, and actors specifically. So then when dealing with my cast, sorry, this is a long answer, but...
No, it's meaningful, yeah.
But then dealing with my cast, I just felt so comfortable, and just, they really understood. I think it's important to be vulnerable, especially when you're talking about something so personal. So I was really vulnerable from the top with them, explaining where this came from and what it meant to me. And I think everyone, I really appreciated what they brought to it, because they understood. I think that helped fuel everyone, because the director, the director can be a lot of things. There's a lot of different types of directors, and I think for me, I want to be the cheerleader. I want a person getting us over the hump. And I think when you open yourself up to other people as a director and be vulnerable and tell them the space this is coming from, I think it allows everyone else to be vulnerable as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you're creating that space yourself, and it's so nice now, Deanna, because you're actually the one that's creating that space and experience where you can work with your actors, but also you can create a space for actors to kind of like allow to be vulnerable, where you're working with them, not against them. The hierarchy is left outside the room, so you're all in this space to work together. And I think that's how you get the best out of each other as well, in a very comfortable way, as it should be on set, which has not always been the experience, obviously, for you or for I. So, kudos to you for doing that. I just want to explain, I thought your whole production design set was so cool, really cool. How do you tell us about that for a second? Yeah,
so I knew very early on that we were going to have to build a bathroom, which I recommend when you're self-financing a short film. We built a bathroom.
Wow.
It is not cheap, and I do not recommend it. So, but we tried to find a place someone would let us shoot there, and I was like, no one's ever going to let us do this.
Yeah.
So I got the money together. I had been saving for a while this has been something I'd wanted to do, actually, before the pandemic. So then the pandemic hit, and I was waiting and waiting. So I was able to scrap some money together, and kind of what was supposed to be two different films ended up just being one, because we had to do this build. But we had this amazing production designer, Rena Pilar, who's super young and green. I watched this great video from Orson Welles where he talks about how he did Citizen Kane. He's like, because I didn't know anything. And when you don't know what the limits are, you have no limits to yourself, and you can just kind of go for it. And what was amazing about Rena is I kind of told her what I was wanted, and she really sort of understood what I was going for, and she just went for it. And I loved the design, because you wouldn't really. It doesn't scream set when you stand on it. It looks like a bathroom. She did an amazing job.
Yeah,
so
amazing job.
That was, I mean, it was the only way we were going to be able to do it, is build it, because I really wanted it to degrade every time we go back in the bathroom with him.
You got it. It was fascinating to watch. Seriously, really.
I mean, there was more I wanted to do, but on our budget, there's limitations. But I feel really good about what we accomplished, given what it cost. So.
Seriously. What's next for you?
Next, so I actually shooting a film, another short in May in Charleston, South Carolina. I will say one thing I love about the festival circuit. This is my first time on the festival circuit, and you just meet amazing people, and you never know who's going to be your next collaborator. And I was at this film festival in Ohio, and just made friends with these 3 filmmakers from Charleston. And they sort of, as we were leaving, they were like, "You should think about shooting your next thing in Charleston." And I didn't think anything of it. And then I was figuring out what I was working on next. I have an 8-week-old kid, so
congrats.
Thank you. But I was like, okay, I know I can't do a feature film right now. I don't have that. But I'm like, I think I can do a short. I think I can have the energy for that. And I was writing it, and it was set in LA, and then I was like, why don't I set in Charleston? Maybe they can hook me up. And oh my God, they have such an amazing team there, and it's just been this amazing serendipity, using that word again, that just comes together from just people you meet at these festivals. So the whole experience with Floater, just outside of making the film and that catharsis, has been this amazing opening up of my world where I've met all these wonderful people who I hope to collaborate with, in the future, and it's been wonderful. So,
well, listen, congratulations, and it's been quite a journey, this film, for you, and just thank you for making it universal for all of us to experience and enjoy. And whatever you took from it, you definitely take something from Floater. There's so much context to it, and a really clever film. And so, wishing you the best in now filming in Charleston. I love that.
Yeah.
And welcome to the New Filmmakers LA family. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.